Hello everyone, Dominic here from Esports News UK, back with another hardware update for you. So if there's anyone out there, you're interested in the latest hardware news, I've got an expert here, Alex from Alpha Beta PC. How you doing, Alex?
Good, Dom. Thanks for having me back again. It's nice to be back.
Anytime, anytime. And you're our expert here. You know what's going on in the hardware market. You know what gamers, esports fans should be waiting for or aware of. In this chat today, we've got a bunch of things we're going to be talking about. 360 hertz monitors, are they worth it? NVIDIA RTX technology. We're going to be talking about some interesting new Intel stuff coming that Alex is sworn to secrecy about, but we can talk about what's out there at the moment.
As much as I can,
expect.
yeah.
Exactly, and some other bits and pieces as well. New Razer Blade laptop. So I'm looking forward to chatting about all of that stuff, Alex. And I guess first of all, the 360 hertz monitors. I did a piece a few weeks ago. Asus have got a new 360 hertz monitor. Sorry, not Asus. AOC have got a new 360 hertz.
Asus have also got one, and MSI and Dell and who else has got one on the market right now? Asus, MSI, Dell, Acer, and AOC. Yeah, the five that I know.
Isn't it? Asus, Acer, AOC.
Oh yeah, AOC.
Can they change their names, some of them?
I think the AOC comes next month, and the other four have definitely got one's 25-inch. I think on the market at the moment, the 360 hertz is.
Right. Okay. And now this AOC Aegon Pro, so AG254FG. That's available from September apparently with an RRP of £699.99. I mean, you could get a budget to mid-range gaming PC for that. Alex, what are your thoughts on these 360 hertz? I mean, I've got a 180 hertz monitor, an Asus one, which is 144 hertz standard, and then you can sort of overclock it to 180. That's lovely for me. I don't have a super amazing graphics card, but if I'm playing games like Final Fantasy 14 or even League of Legends, it looks buttery smooth. You know, are these 360 hertz? Are we really going to see a difference? What's your view on them?
I mean, I think it depends on. First of all, can your hardware drive it? Because obviously, the more frames, the more power you need.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, how professional are you that you need it to be that powerful, you know? I guess it's very much dependent on what you can afford as well. So, you know, I mean, if you want to take your car, for example, as a daily driver, then, you know, you could look at getting something like an M3 if you want something as a sporty car, you know? But then do you need to upgrade it to an F1 car to drive around London in, you know? It's similar kind of concept. I mean, people have done tests, and having higher frame rates and refresh rates do make a difference in terms of human reaction time.
Mm-hmm.
So you will find that on Twitch-based stuff, especially, that the 360 hertz probably does have, at least for the very high-end, you know, competitive players, which will probably be a very, very small percentage, you know, maybe where you're earning out of it, or, you know, doing regular streaming and stuff like that and what have you, and you're playing in that top sort of percentile, it would probably make a difference. But for the everyday casual gamer, I don't see it being a huge advantage. And again, to hit those kind of frame rates is, you know, especially if you want to have ultra settings on everything, you know, you may have to sacrifice some sort of quality setting in order to have the frame rate. You have to decide which one you want to go for, unless of course you've got the budget to just have it all, you know, like, you know, SLI 3090s and, you know, 3080s and all these, or new 4 series or what have you, and, you know, Crossfire. And if you've got the budget for it, then go nuts. You know, I'm admittedly still on 60 hertz on my main screens,
right.
So I have 3 of the Dell 32-inch 4K screens. They're just 60 hertz, and yeah, I mean, most of the games I play, my Twitch-based stuff, I don't play much anymore. I've been playing Doom.
When you say Twitch-based, do you mean things like CS:GO, quick reactions?
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to games that sort of have things like global cooldowns, like Warcraft or something, or, you know, most MMOs have like a global cooldown to their abilities and stuff. So you'll probably won't, refresh rate doesn't have as big an impact on your actual, you know, playing skill. Maybe for the eye, it would look a bit smoother, a bit what have you. But in terms of actual gaming reflex necessity, it has very little impact on those kind of games that have things like global cooldowns. But yeah, I mean, like I say, Doom is about the most Twitch based I get nowadays because I just don't have the time, unfortunately. So 60 hertz suits me fine. I'll probably realistically upgrade them, but they're such good monitors that I just, I mean, they're three 4K monitors, and I can play across all three of them with the NVIDIA stereo. What do they call it? Stereoscopic thing, where it splits it across all, kind of like the Eyefinity from AMD,
And that's interesting because you've got 60 hertz there, but you've got 4K on it, so you're going to get amazing visuals, but maybe not quite as smooth as a,
I usually lock most games in VSync, so I don't get any screen tearing or anything like that, and what have you. They don't have G-Sync or anything on them, so I just lock them in VSync. I get a solid 60 frames per second. I just kind of enjoy my game, and again, I play a lot of RPGs and stuff as well, so it's not as there isn't as much chaos going on. The most chaotic game I've probably been playing at the moment is Diablo 3. So,
yeah, it's quite fast, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But you have global cooldowns on abilities and stuff like that, so it's not really not a necessity for me to have that kind of thing. So really, it comes down to what you're playing, what level you're playing at, and what you can afford.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned G-Sync. So I use a G-Sync monitor, and I had a friend who told me that if you have your settings, you want to, if you're playing 144 hertz in your game and you set your frames, he recommended, and I've seen in videos online, that you should cap your frame rate to
slightly lower.
Sorry, your hertz, slightly lower. So so
you want to have your hertz at 144, but your frames per second capped at like 140.
That's it. Yeah.
And you can use something like, some games have it in, so you want to have VSync turned off in the game, you want to have G-Sync turned on in the NVIDIA control panel, and then you want to cap your frame rate just below your refresh rate, and you can use something like Reaver Tuner, MSI Afterburner, EVGA, Precision, or some games have a built-in frame per second capper, but I just usually use MSI Afterburner.
Yeah, so my NVIDIA control panel has a setting in there where I can
I think it does for cap frame rate as well.
And I can cap it, across all software. But then I
use the MSI the Reaver Tuner part of MSI Afterburner and just do it for all games. I pretty much cap all my games. Well, like I said, I cap most games at 60 frames per second because I set VSync and everything. I don't have G-Sync at the moment, but I play everything pretty much at 60, despite the fact that I'm a little behind on hardware. I've got two 1080 Ti's and a 5960X, but I can obviously play at higher frame rates, but I just don't have much of a necessity to at the moment. Most of the time I just use it for benchmarking.
Yeah. So tell the people out there, Alex, why do you cap it slightly lower? I've been told it's to stop your G-Sync turning on and off intermittently.
Well, G-Sync should turn on and off automatically anyway, but the way I understood it was just for screen tearing. So because when you get closer to the point of the refresh rate, it may not be able to sync it as perfectly, and you end up with slight amounts of screen tearing. And the idea is that you're basically creating less stress by having it slightly underneath the refresh rate.
Yeah.
Whether, like I said, I haven't extensively tested it myself because I don't have a 144 hertz or a high refresh rate G-Sync monitor, but that's my understanding of it anyway.
And for a 360 hertz monitor, you mentioned, if you've got the power and the budget for it, what kind of graphics card are you looking for there? You need a pretty good one, right, for 360?
Yeah, GPU as well as CPU, obviously. Both are, and then it becomes game dependent on whether that, game, which architecture it's going to utilize more, Something like GTA, for example, utilizes CPU quite heavily.
Right.
So you may find that if your CPU, you may have something like a 3080.
And that's your processor, right? For people who don't know CPU and GPU graphics card. That's all right. No, I'm sure people will listen to this will understand, but just in case.
You end up getting in on the shorthand with the acronyms and stuff, and you just it becomes automatic. But so I mean, it's very dependent as well on the games and how they've been optimized. Like I say, GTA is quite CPU bound.
Yeah.
So if you've got a 3080 in there, but you've got a slightly older CPU, maybe like an 8th gen or a 9th gen or something like that, only an i5 or something, then you're going to find that's going to be your bottleneck is the CPU, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it is dependent as well on the game that you're playing. Do they support SLI? You know, if they don't support SLI, then again, you'll be bottlenecked by having just one GPU if that's the case, because it won't be utilizing the second one. So it does depend on the software that's being used, obviously, and whether it will take advantage of the hardware that you have. But if we're talking sort of you've got full blown i9 plus dual 3080s and stuff like that, then I don't really foresee a huge amount of trouble getting to the high frame rates. But I mean, 360 hertz is a lot of frame rate to ask for on a 4K screen, especially.
Yeah, 100%. And my last question around monitors, Alex, is I've got a obviously if you have a 360 hertz monitor, there might be games you're playing where you don't want it in 360, you might want it in 240 or 144.
Yeah.
My monitor can be overclocked to 180. Now, do you recommend leaving your monitor maxed out at all times? That will obviously decrease the life of the monitor, but not by much, I guess.
Again, it comes down to how often you plan on changing it. I mean, I don't think I had one incident with actually my 4K screens, which is when they were first released. There was a problem with the initial firmwares, and let's just say I had significant issues with them, which ended up involved with me and Dell in court, but I won't go into that right now.
Oh gosh.
Suffice to say that I won, which is the nice thing.
Wow.
But and since then I've been happy with the ones they replaced them with. But again, it's how often do you change it? I find my monitor probably changes the least out of all my hardware. I mean, as I say, I'm still on 1080 Ti's and a 5960X, which is obviously a bit older. As I've got older, I haven't upgraded as much, but I can show you all my builds from previous. You're talking every 6 months. You're talking, I went from 1080s, 1080 Ti's. I've had the 480s. I had the 580s. I've had 7970s. I've had pretty much every generation of card up until the 1080 Ti's, which is where I didn't go up to the 20 series, and I haven't yet gone to the 30 series. So I change all of that a lot more. And in that period, I've only had 1, 2, 3 changes of monitors in the last 10, 13 years. So yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, even if you're overclocking it to that sort of thing, you're probably going to get 4 years of life out of it easily, if not more. They're pretty robust, most monitors,
Yeah.
And again, like I say, it's dependent on how quickly you change them as a personal thing.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, thanks on the monitor stuff. And loosely linked with that, on the display front, I keep getting press releases from NVIDIA about RTX technology expanding to more games and so on. I'm not really down with RTX. What is it, and is this good news for esports gamers?
I mean, I think it's good in terms of quality of product being delivered. It does make games look better. It's undeniably it does. The question comes down to with ray tracing and stuff, whether you want to sacrifice power or what have you for glossy, beautiful visuals. It's all about immersion, I think, more so with RTX, better shadows and the way the light refracts off of things, and it gives you more of a kind of it sounds strange, but I actually notice it better when I'm using a curved monitor. I find it more immersive, and you can actually notice I don't know, maybe it's the immersiveness of having the curved monitor. VR as well, when you're obviously got it on your eyes, it becomes a lot more noticeable. But I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a gimmick. I'd say it's a fairly good, product that they're offering right now. And I think again, it's dependent on the person on the other end using that machine, and what they're looking to get out of their game. I mean, there are some games you play which have a very immersive experience where you want that kind of thing, and you want full-on 7.1 surround, so you can hear footsteps behind you and stuff and things like that, and all these bits and pieces, and light coming from all the different areas and how it refracts, and people take notice of that. But again, I don't know. Maybe it's slightly niche, but it's nice to see companies mixing it up and adding new technologies. And we all want the motion video full like movie style graphics. Realistically, at the end of the day,
Mm. Is RTX? You mentioned ray tracing. Is that just another name for it? Ray tracing something.
RTX is basically the name of the. It was developed originally for like movie studios and like architectural stuff, design and things like that, in order to simulate lighting and stuff like that on like angles of lighting coming in and how they refract off of things. So yeah, it's part of ray tracing as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Another thing on my list here is this Intel Arc. Now that you pointed out to me before we hit record, the Arc, there's an Intel Arc with a K, and this one is with a C.
Yeah, so the one with the K is the Intel Arc, is the knowledge base.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it stands for off the top of my head now. Something or other knowledge base, something, and that's just literally where you go to all the data sheets about the processors and all the Intel devices and stuff like that. And the one with the C is the potential upcoming new graphics cards that they're supposed to be releasing Q2 of next year, I think.
Yeah, so I'm just bringing that up now. It's a Q1 of 2022. The first ARC-based graphics products will be available in high-performance desktops, add-in cards, and notebooks. And they'll share more info on it soon. But there is an article I can link to on the Intel Gaming Access website in the description of this video. So I'm not fully aware or down with this stuff, but hopefully there's going to be some kind of improvements.
Yeah, I mean, I had some discussions with Intel, which I can't really talk much about, on Wednesday. I don't think they're going to be aiming in terms of, top super. I don't think they're going to be targeting like the 3080s, 3090s, even 3070s and stuff like that. I think they're going to be looking at a slightly lower end of the market. They did try to do something a while back. I can't remember what it was now. It was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and that never came to fruition. So I mean, is
this inbuilt graphics? When you get Intel inbuilt graphics, what is this Arc? Is it
DG2? I believe they're looking at doing both. Obviously, you have the built-in CPU graphics, which has come a long way in the last decade. A lot of them now can play games pretty reasonably at 1080 and stuff. But I mean, I believe they're looking at both. I know that they want to kind of push the Nook as well to be quite a powerful little gaming system, and that will require significant power in graphics. But like I said, you're not going to reach the high level 3080s, 3070s, all those sort of things, the 3090s. You're going to be looking more around the sort of 1660s and sort of 1060s maybe, and that kind of area, like the mid-range to lower end. Maybe they'll go higher end if it takes off, I don't know, but I think it's always good to have more competition. It encourages growth in other companies and what have you.
Yeah,
but I'll wait to test them before I make my decision on how good they are.
I look forward to your verdict, Alex. And then on the topic of Intel, they've got some other things coming, which again I mentioned at the start, you're sort of sworn to secrecy around, but based on what's out there at the moment, I'm guessing these are new processors, and this could be exciting news for gamers.
Yeah, I mean, they look promising, the Alder Lakes. The most important thing is that with every generation we see improved performance. And, I, as a personal thing, I don't consider it good enough if it can't at least improve by 10%. Like, that's just a personal thing. If it doesn't at least improve my usage of my computer or my games or my things by at least 10%, then I won't generally bother with it. That's just my kind of personal percentage in terms of the way I work, but obviously we've got Moore's law and stuff like that, and that's it's creeping close to whether it's gonna, I mean, arguably it hasn't actually been in effect for, because they say it would double and what have you, but We've
So,
increased the
so
amount
anyone watching this, Moore's law, right, is the idea that things get twice as small and twice as powerful. Is that correct?
Yeah, just
Kind
like
of.
they start it, so it, yeah, the theory is that so it started off originally as that it should increase double the amount of power, I
Yeah.
believe, that it was originally. But we've kind of now it kind of is, we increase the amount of CPUs, you know. So whereas previously we were going from 1 gigahertz to 2 gigahertz to 3 gigahertz and stuff like that, you know, we're starting to reach a very kind of cap at around 5 gigahertz. You know, we've been at this between 4 and 5 gigahertz barrier now for quite a while. I mean, I was hitting 4.2 as a regular overday clock on Sandy Bridge. What was the Intel 965 and the 920s? Was that Sandy Bridge? I can't remember now. It's been such a while. Yeah. So, you know, and that would have been what, 2011, I think, Rampage 1. Yeah, I think somewhere around there. So, you know, we've been at this kind of 4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz barrier, although people are obviously breaking it in terms of overclocking records and using LN2 and die spots and stuff, like, but it's not something you can use on an everyday system, you know? So we've been kind of in this limbo of 4 to 5 gigahertz for a while, but we've been heavily increasing the amount of cores that are on a CPU, you know? So it's, it's, you know, as long as there is consistently, although I was a bit disappointed in the last Intel i9, which reduced the amount of cores on their top-end processor from the previous gen, which I don't know why they did that, but c'est la vie.
It's interesting what you say about Moore's law as well, because I remember interviewing, back when I was editor of PC Retail years ago, I interviewed AMD's gaming scientist at the time. I can't remember his name now, bald chap, but he was telling me, I was talking to him about 8K monitors and 4K, and I said, well, how far are we going to go down? And I think he said, when you get to 16K, the human eye can't tell the difference beyond that with the pixels. So, 16K, well, I mean, 32K, it's a similar thing, right, with cores and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, again, it comes down to what you're using it for as well, you know. I mean, if you're encoding a video, and of course, like, if you can, you know, by adding 2 more cores, you can reduce the video encoding time from let's just, as an example, say an hour down to 40 minutes, you know. If you're doing 100 videos a year, that's a hell of a lot of saving in time, you know. So it just, again, it depends on what it's been. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that games really aren't utilizing the amount of cores available to them right now. And, you know, it would be nice to see better optimization in gaming anyway. You know, synthetic benchmarks are great for, you know, EPing, I guess. You know, I'm not, you know, a hardware bot. I was a regular user, consistently overclocking systems, you know, water cooled dice, all that. Oh, you know, look what I got. Look what, yeah, guys, anyone can beat that kind of thing. But the reality is I'm never going to run my system at those kind of speeds for any prolonged period. So, you know, it's a case of, you know, what are you using the system for on a regular daily basis? And is it going to make a difference to your regular life, you know? And I think in terms of gaming, as long as the single core increases frame rates and helps with that, that's the most important thing. So you don't necessarily need, you know, the i9 version. You can probably get away on a lot of games with an i5 and i7.
Yeah. So gamers then, on this Intel new stuff that's coming, keep their eyes peeled, I guess you'd say.
Pretty much, yeah. Soonish. Just have a look. Yeah, there should be some benchmarks coming, probably September-ish.
And these things, of course, they find their way into the systems of pro gamers. You know, a lot of the pro players will have, I guess, systems supplied by them, by some kind of partners with the esports team or the organisation. So gamers, these pro gamers, they might not even know what's in their systems, you know?
I mean, generally when you get given something like an engineering sample, you're told it's an engineering sample. And usually it'll have a serial code on it that reflects that. So it'll have like ES written on the end or something like that. And you'll have to sign something as well if you have an engineering sample given to you. And then when the NDI runs out, you'll probably end up selling it on eBay, which I think most people end up doing. But the engineering samples can usually be pretty good for overclocking and things like that and what have you, and testing and stuff. So again, it's always, you know, take certain benchmarks with a grain of salt, because they don't necessarily always represent the off-the-shelf market they're very cherry picked, a lot of them.
Yeah, understood. So we've spoken about Intel there. I had a press release land in my inbox the other week. The UK's most Googled tech problems, and apparently slow computers tops the list. I'm just going to bring this press release up here. This was a study by online security experts PPC Shield. And slow computer or speed up Windows 10 or how to speed up laptop or speed up computer is up there. And I guess there's a lot of things that you can do to speed up your computer. Alex, maybe you have a couple of or two or three tips.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the biggest one that you notice the most is people installing a lot of stuff and having it run resident in their RAM and then running out of RAM. I mean, most systems have 8 gigs, but that can get filled up pretty quick nowadays. And obviously what happens is when you fill up the RAM, it then begins to cache to your hard drive, because obviously you've got no more RAM left to process, so it will cache to the hard drive. If you've got an old mechanical hard drive in there, it's obviously very slow. Even with an SSD, the comparison between the speed at which RAM can process and an SSD can process is huge. So that would definitely, that's one of the biggest things I notice is not enough RAM, and then it ends up caching to the hard drive, especially when you're using big programs like Photoshop and Premiere and stuff like that, that really munch up the RAM. And even Chrome and most browsers use a lot of RAM, a gig on average probably nowadays. So I'd say RAM is definitely one thing that you'd want to look at. But there's various other things, what's running in the background, and what have you got going on? Is it doing search indexing is Windows search indexing a hard drive? Is the hard drive being utilized in the background by some other piece of software, which obviously slows down again? There's really so many various things that it can potentially be. I mean, I can create a huge list of things to look at, but without actually looking at a system and checking these things, you can't definitively tell,
I use a vast cleanup. I know people out there that might not want to pay for things, but I find it useful because it can detect, if I've installed something new, like I don't know, something for streaming or whatever. Sometimes that can be sleeping on your computer active all the time. So I don't use it a lot. Tell that to go away, right, and stuff like that. Yeah. It's pretty good at picking up things like that, and getting rid of them, and that helps improves a little bit.
I've used Avast, I've used Bitdefender, I've used all the various different big brand ones over my period in computing for the last 20 odd plus years, and I find honestly I just use Windows Defender now, and probably Malwarebytes. That's about it I use for the moment. But I wouldn't, like with my mum, for example, I'd have her use probably something like AVG or Avast or something like that, because it has good web link protection as well and stuff like that, which maybe if you're clicking a obscure email, phishing email or something like that, it'll help catch it or something.
Yeah, so, I find Avast is good for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's it's a case, we have a bit of a term in the industry which we call PEBCAC. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I haven't heard of that, no.
It stands for problem exists between keyboard and chair. So that's probably where the majority of problems are.
And when I used to work as editor of PC Retail, I would do little interesting stories from different independent resellers and repairers and retailers, and I'd go to different independent stores and ask what their bugbears were or what their most common problems were with some of their customers. And the amount of time, I know it's become a cliche and a silly thing now, but have you tried
turning it off and on again?
Turning it on again, or turning the on switch on?
Yeah. I mean, I still is that way though. Literally, probably 99% of anyone that contacts me with a hardware issue, I say, "Can you just try restart?" I try to be a bit more than you try turning it off and on again, because it gets a bit like repetitive, kind of like in the IT crowd. But a bit more. Could you just try giving the computer a restart for me, please? A bit more politely, and then they'll phone back like, "Oh, you fixed it? Yeah, no problem. You're welcome."
Brilliant. Okay, I had a couple of other things on the list here, Alex. I've got Asus announced Zen Wi-Fi ET8, and the Razer have launched a new Razer Blade 17, the most powerful ever. They're saying laptop. You want your thoughts on them? I think you're using a Razer Blade, aren't you?
I am indeed. I'm on a Razer Blade 15. I am a big fan of Razer. I know a lot of people condemn them for their pricing, and especially when they first were around, people were like, "Oh, it's very kind of elitist sort of stuff and gear and things." But you know, it is quite cultish. I mean, I do really like, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but Min Liang Tan.
Yeah, the boss of Razer, CEO,
yeah,
right?
He's very in with the community. He's passionate about his stuff. Like, I love his crazy things like Razer toasters, and
they've had good April Fool's announcements, haven't they, Razer?
And yeah, like the one with, I remember the Venom one where you could inject the Venom to boost your gaming experience and stuff, and yeah, all these sort of things, increase your reflexes. And I mean, I like Razer as a brand, and I think they do produce very, very good quality products. I have obviously I have a Blade, I have a Razer Ultimate keyboard, one with the LCD screen, which I don't think I've ever used the LCD screen in my whole life, but I have it.
I've got a Def Adder mouse, and I have to say, after my old one went, after about 2 years of usage, I bought another one because I just like how they feel. And
yeah, I think mice and keyboards are very personal, especially mice. I'm still using a Logitech G700S, and I just, when you because it becomes so habitual, the way the keys are laid out on the mouse and stuff, and you have it programmed to, like melee or switch rocket weapon or whatever, you have it programmed for all your games, so you know exactly, without second guessing, where that button is.
Yeah, it becomes muscle memory.
Exactly, your muscle memory is there. I have like 4 G700Ss. I have 2 still in boxes because in case they stop making them and I wanted to use them again. I mean, I've had plenty of mice over my time though, from Razer and Logitech, and going back to like MX518s and things like that, and probably even further back than that, and what have you. So G9Xs and Mumbas and all the various ones. I am looking at a Razer potentially now. I've forgotten the model now.
What mouse?
Yeah, I can't remember the model off the top of my head now. It's the new gaming one they do. It's about, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not cheap. They're about 120 quid or so. But I do find the mice a very personal thing. Like,
yeah, definitely. I'd say more than a keyboard, because when you're gaming, you need to move quickly and everything. Like you say, the buttons on the side. You
become so sort of habitually used to how it works, and it's such a, I can manage with another keyboard, but switching to another mouse becomes and takes a little bit of time,
And it's hard to test out mice as well in this landscape we're in with COVID, and other than there's a few high street stores out there, there's not really many. It's not easy to test out new mice these days, is it?
No, nor not really much hardware is that easy to test out nowadays in general. I mean,
you can watch YouTube videos and things. There's a lot of good review sites out there, but even then it's personal, like you say.
Admittedly, PC World does carry, not my table. Admittedly, PC World does carry quite a few of the brand, which they have on the table and stuff, but when it's not the same when you can't actually game with it and play it and get the feel for it. So you do rely heavily on reviews of, especially YouTube reviews and stuff, of people actually using the mouse, and it's always interesting to see what they've gone from as well, because you can obviously, so if somebody had gone from a G700S to let's say a Naga or something like that, then for me it's going to be more interesting to me than somebody's that's gone from, say, a Mamba, because it's a completely different field,
Yeah, definitely.
But, yeah, they do. I mean, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos lately of people reviewing the mouse that I'm looking at getting, and just trying to make my decision on whether I finally give up the G700S and just sell the 2 I've still got boxed.
It's a tough decision to make. I'll just say on the Razer Blades before we close, the new Razer Blade 17, that's £2,400. They have upgraded.
They go up to 3.5.
Yeah, I mean that starts at yeah. They don't even put the 3.5 here on the press release, right? They just put starts at. So I'm glad you said that, Alex. And they've also upgraded the Blade 15 base model with these 11th gen Intel Core i7 processors and some other bits and pieces.
Yeah, I think they'll be going 12th gen at the start of New Year for the Razers, which will be the Alder Lake stuff.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I love my Blade. It's brilliantly quick. I've got a 10th gen one, and it for work and even gaming and stuff. It does everything I need it to do. And I've got the 15, and it's great. Like really, really good laptop. Previous to this, I had the Microsoft Surface Book. And that was a good laptop as well. Nowhere near as powerful. And then prior to that, I think I had Dell XPS. That was pretty good. But the Razer, I think, has been my favorite of all my laptops.
Yeah, and they've got, it says here in the press release, they've got the up to the RTX NVIDIA 3080 laptop GPU. So you're going to get, and display options up to a 4K touchscreen. So you're going to get some good...
Yeah, I think the 3.5 models 4K 144 hertz touchscreen.
That's lovely, isn't it? I mean, it's blooming expensive, but you're going to get a decent.
And they're nice touchscreens as well, because generally touchscreens tend to be slightly duller in terms of like color reproduction and stuff like that. But they're very sharp. The Razer one's very, very sharp.
I would just say to people watching this, if you buy an expensive laptop like that, think about insuring it, because you don't want to lose something like that and then you're in trouble, because that's a lot of money, isn't it? Obviously,
most house insurances now will cover it as long as you tell them that you have it, and they'll cover it outside of the house as well.
Yeah, 100%. Alex, I've just got this Zen Wi-Fi ET8 we were going to talk about here before we leave it now. So this is a mesh networking system. So what even is that, right? I'm not great with this. To deliver seamless high-performance Wi-Fi to the entire home. So do you have little points around the house?
So mesh is just basically where you have, say, you won't have an Ethernet backbone. It'll all be done over wireless, and you'll have, say, 6 different of these access points, and each one will communicate with each other regularly to determine the fastest pass through for the data back to obviously your router and your devices. I mean, they're very good in houses that don't, you can't wire up. I mean, I'm going to be straight here, yeah? You will never convince me to go Wi-Fi over Ethernet.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Like, ever. I think Wi-Fi is great for, laptops, phones, all these bits and pieces and stuff like this. I think that mesh systems work well when you don't want to spend a huge sum of money pulling in cables around your house and creating the infrastructure for Ethernet and what have you.
It's less for gamers and more for families, this, isn't it, really, with a big house, maybe?
Yeah, or if you're internet cafes or something like that, But even then I would prefer to have, network sockets, RJ45 sockets and modules at every potential. So if you were hot desking, you could just plug in a cable as opposed to having to use Wi-Fi. Like, it all depends on how you design your cafe. But I will always be pro Ethernet over Wi-Fi for gaming, especially.
Yeah.
Except for instances where it's just not feasible. Where maybe you are in a home where you can't, channel out walls and chase out walls even, and pull in 200 meters of cabling and copper and stuff and patch panels and all these sort of things, but it becomes an expense. So there are definitely uses for it, things like that. But my house, pretty much any jobs that I do that involve Ethernet is all infrastructure. I did Kent University. I did 200 kilometers of fiber and 150 kilometers of copper. So I have no issue doing infrastructure, but it's myself doing it. If you're paying somebody to do it, it can be really expensive. But yeah, the mesh networks work great if you just need to get Wi-Fi around your house and you don't want a huge expense.
Yeah. Understood. Alex, it's been a great chat. I've really enjoyed this, actually, picking apart the press releases and the news over the past month, right? And we're going to have more of this stuff, more stuff from Intel when it gets announced, we can publicly talk about it a little bit more. Is there anything else you want to add, Alex?
No, it's great. I mean, obviously, Alpha Beta, check us out, and we will always keep all the latest hardware. We should be seeing some of the 12th gen stuff for testing coming in soon. It's about much as I can say on it, and we definitely have reserves, so we will have it on launch day for all the new 12th gen Intel stuff. Check us out, and want to ask us any questions, want to get directly in touch, either through Dominic or through our website or any of our social media channels, even if it's just to ask some questions, like, we're always happy to engage with the community. So, come and check out Alpha Beta and, have a word with us. And we're gamers, we're hardware enthusiasts. If we could talk computers and hardware all day and probably, bore people to death with it.
Oh, well, I've been entertained. I've enjoyed this. I hope you have as well, everyone watching. If you, like Alex says, if you have, and yourself, Alex, I was saying to people watching, man, you as well. If you're watching this, guys, and you have a question for Alex, or you want us to talk about something on this show, please just let me know. Like Alex said, you can contact Alpha Beta PC on Twitter or through the website. You can contact me again through Twitter, or just leave a question in the comments below. I'd love to hear some of your comments. It can be about anything. You might have an issue with your graphics card, something not displaying quite right on League of Legends or Dota or Rocket League or whatever else that you play. Please give us a shout, and we'll be back again next month. I would like to do this towards the end of each month, and it's a nice thing that we'll focus on different bits of tech each time. But the world of tech is amazing. It's evolving all the time.
Cool products, days, weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great. It's good for me as well to be back in this world and focusing on tech a little bit more rather than just solely esports. It's good to know this stuff as a gamer. It's good to be equipped and have the knowledge of this stuff.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think for esports teams and orgs as well, it's good for you, for sponsors, who you're talking to in the tech hardware world. It's good for you to be up to date. You might have questions from your players. It's good to know this stuff. So hit us with your questions. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back again next month. Thank you for watching, and thanks for your time, Alex.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, Dom.
Take care.